All right, so we're back and ready to dive deep into some juicy NFL draft speculation.
TUC's right.
Especially for you Washington Commanders fans out there.
That's right. We're zeroing in on the Commanders and this idea they could land a real difference maker on offense with that 29th overall pick.
Yeah. We're talking about a potential game changer even that late in the first round. And to break it all down, we're digging into a really interesting article from Yardbarker.
Originally posted on Washington Commanders on SI back on March 30th.
So the big question they're posing is, could the Commanders actually snag what they call an instant impact playmaker at 29?
And that's what we're going to unpack for you today.
Exactly, because I think when you hear 29th pick, your mind might immediately jump to, okay, but who's really going to be left at that point?
Right. Are we talking about someone who can really move the needle for them on offense?
Right. What kind of player might still be available? And is it someone who could really shift their trajectory next season?
That's the fun part about the draft, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You just never know how things are going to shake out.
It's that whole draft night drama.
Yeah, year after year, we see these highly touted prospects slide down the board for various reasons.
And those are the moments teams picking later are praying for.
It creates these pockets of value where a team like the Commanders could find themselves in a position to get a player that many thought would be long gone.
Potentially a top 15 or even top 10 talent.
Exactly. And that's where this article gets interesting because they bring in the analysis of NFL.com's Bucky Brooks.
Okay, a respected voice when it comes to draft evaluation.
No doubt. And Brooks really makes a case for why the Commanders should be keeping a close eye on a specific player, and that's Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden III.
Luther Burden III. Okay, so for those of you maybe not as deep in the draft weeds as others.
Right, not everyone's got their mock drafts memorized yet.
Tell us a bit more about why Bucky Brooks thinks this guy could be such a steal even at pick 29.
Brooks is really high on Burden's ability after the catch.
What they call those catch-and-run tools in the article?
Exactly, and it makes sense. Burden was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school.
So the talent was obvious even back then.
Right. It doesn't guarantee NFL success, but it tells you scouts saw something special in him early on.
And Brooks seems especially impressed with what Burden can do once the ball's in his hands.
The article says he dazzles with the ball in his hands. And when you look at the specifics, it's easy to see why.
They talk about his speed, his burst, that ability to just explode past defenders.
And then you add in his body control and elusiveness, the way he can make guys miss in space.
He sounds like a nightmare to try and tackle.
Yeah, he's not just a speed guy either.
Right. He's not just going to take it to the house on a go route every play.
Brooks really emphasizes Burden's versatility.
Yeah, they highlight him as a threat, as a receiver, obviously, but also as a runner.
And even as a returner on special teams.
So you're talking about a guy who can impact the game in multiple ways.
And when you look at his athletic profile, it all adds up. He's 6 feet tall, 206 pounds.
A good solid frame.
And he ran a 4.41 40-yard dash at the combine.
So that speed is legit.
There's no denying that. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
Brooks goes as far as comparing Burden to Deebo Samuel.
Wow. Okay, now that's a name that gets people's attention.
Absolutely. And the comparison makes sense when you think about Deebo Samuel's unique skill set.
Yeah, he's that do-it-all offensive weapon.
Right. And Brooks specifically points to their shared ability to just be absolute menaces with the ball in their hands.
So we're not just talking about some random wide receiver comparison here.
No, Brooks sees some real similarities in their games.
And what's fascinating is he doesn't stop there.
Right, he takes it a step further.
He actually argues that Burden is a more polished route runner coming out of college than Samuel was.
Now, that's a bold statement.
But if it's true, it suggests Burden might be able to contribute in a wider variety of ways from day one in the NFL.
Right, maybe he's not as raw as Samuel was at the same stage.
So imagine this. You're a Commanders fan. You've already got Terry McLaurin, a bona fide #1 receiver.
One of the best in the league.
And now you add a guy like Luther Burden III, who's drawing Deebo Samuel comparisons and might be an even more polished route runner.
Suddenly your offense is looking pretty scary.
That's some serious firepower for opposing defenses to worry about.
And the article doesn't just focus on the receivers either.
Right. They connect this to the bigger picture and what it could mean for quarterback Jayden Daniels.
Exactly. Daniels had a really impressive rookie season. Remember, he was even in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
And the article suggests that adding a dynamic weapon like Burden could give Daniels an even better platform to succeed in year 2.
You surround a young quarterback with talent, and it gives them the best chance to take that next step.
It's all about creating the right environment for him to thrive.
Now, of course, I know some people listening might be thinking, hold on, what about the defense?
Yeah, that's always the other side of the coin.
Especially with Jonathan Allen leaving in free agency.
And the Commanders haven't exactly made a huge splash in free agency to address their edge rushers.
Those are definitely valid concerns.
But the article makes an interesting point about the team's new general manager, Adam Peters.
Right. They highlight his draft philosophy.
From what we've seen so far and what they say in the article, what seems to be Peters' guiding principle when it comes to the draft?
It seems like he's not afraid to go against the grain.
In what way?
He seems to be more focused on taking the best player available rather than reaching for a need.
So he's not going to panic and draft a defensive tackle just because they lost Jonathan Allen.
It seems like his philosophy is more about building the best overall roster, even if it means addressing a need a year or two later.
So let's say it's draft night. We're at pick 29.
Okay, I'm with you.
And for whatever reason, maybe some offensive linemen went higher than expected, or a few defensive prospects flew up the boards.
Think about all the time.
Luther Burden III is still there, and the Commanders board says he's the best player available.
And maybe there's no defensive player who they view as significantly better than Burden at that point.
Exactly. So what does the article say Bucky Brooks recommends in that scenario?
Well, Brooks is pretty straightforward. He says, don't overthink it.
Don't get cute. Don't outsmart yourself.
If Burden's there at 29, and you believe he's the best talent available, you take him.
Trust your evaluations, trust your board, and make the pick.
That's Brooks's advice in a nutshell.
And that really gets to the heart of this whole discussion, doesn't it?
It does. The article highlights Burden's potential to be an instant impact player for the Commanders' offense.
And the worry is that if they overthink it,
if they get too caught up in what-ifs and future needs, they might miss out on a chance to significantly upgrade their offense right away.
So to recap for everyone listening, we've done a deep dive on this Yardbarker article looking at Bucky Brooks' take on the Commanders' draft strategy.
The key takeaway is that there's a real chance Luther Burden III, this dynamic Missouri wide receiver, could be there for the taking at pick 29.
Brooks is super high on Burden's game, his ability after the catch, his versatility.
And he even thinks Burden is a more polished route runner than Deebo Samuel was coming out of college.
Which is saying something.
No doubt. So the potential is there for Burden to be a true difference maker for the Commanders.
We've also talked about how adding a weapon like Burden could be huge for Jayden Daniels' development.
Give your young quarterback more tools to work with.
And while the defense obviously needs attention, the article emphasized Adam Peters' philosophy of prioritizing the best player available.
So the message is clear. If Luther Burden III is still on the board at 29, the Commanders should strongly consider taking him.
Don't overthink it. Take the talent and add a potentially game-changing weapon to your offense.
So to leave you with a final thought, imagine Burden is a Commander next season.
How much does that change their offensive approach?
How much more explosive can that offense become with Burden added to the mix?
And what does it mean for their other needs, particularly on defense?
Do they feel more comfortable waiting another year to address those holes?
Or do they shift gears and maybe target defense earlier in the draft?
It's a fascinating scenario, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
But one thing's for sure, the Commanders